Hello there, it's Josh here from Racing to Profit. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. As always with these videos, if you're watching on YouTube and I am talking too slowly for you, then in the bottom right hand corner you will see a cog, a settings cog, where you can click the playback speed and speed me up if you so wish, and if you're short on time. In this video, those of you who are looking at the screen in front of you, it may be apparent who I'm going to focus on here. Jockey Sean Bowen. I'm recording this on the 17th of November 2021. There was some chat on the blog yesterday after Sean rode a peach on one of Ollie Murphy's upper air, delivering him late, some scrappy jumps down the back. I'm not quite sure how he got him into winning contention. The same can be said for the Keithley's back on the lash in the cross-country race on the weekend just gone. That was another phenomenal ride, especially his strength after the finish. And getting a horse that inexperienced round was a credit in itself. And quite an achievement. Sean, as you may or may not know, was officially Harry Fry's #1 stable jockey up until the last few weeks, I think, or certainly the start of the main winter season, if not over the summer. It was all amicable, but he was definitely stable #1 last season and possibly half a year before that. Harry Fry, like many trainers, Tizard, Twister, Hobbs, Harry Whittington, a few others, didn't have a great time of it last year. I suspect due to illness. Indeed, Sean's own dad, Peter Bowen, had a torrid time of it before this year also. So something was up there with some of those strings in terms of illness that they couldn't necessarily get on top with. In any case, Harry Fry wanted to mix things up a bit and wasn't happy with the Yard's performance. So kind of gave Sean the boot in terms of being #1 rider, and said he would use a variety of different jockeys. He still does use Sean. I'm not sure if that's because certain owners want him on. He rode Ask Me, I think is the name of the horse, or one of his decent chasers, probably being aimed at the Welsh National. Ask Me Early, something like that. Rode one of those to victory recently for Harry Fry and a few others as well. So he is still being used, but that has given him the freedom. That's the main point I want to get onto, to be a freelance and to cart himself around the country and try and get on as many decent horses as he can. I will jump. What should I start with? Actually, let me start with, well, obviously you can read in front of you. I should say, as I whiz through a few things here, do watch with a notepad if you like your stats, if you like your angles. I will be touching on things that you may wish to note down that will be useful for your punting moving forwards, if you like that sort of thing. And as you long-suffering readers know, either of the free blog, the members club, or you just read the free emails I send out, I do like my trainer stats and behaviour and the people, which I should probably focus more on, trying to work out their methods, behaviour, and of course with jockeys, some are better than others. So yeah, do watch with a notepad. You can obviously note down the micro angle you see in front of you now. I did some digging for kind of 40 minutes to try and find some kind of useful micro system, I suppose, for Sean Bowen, and some sort of way in which makes logical sense. You can see that in front of you here. All races over 2 miles 6 and further. Now, many things you can kind of debate, I suppose, and ponder when it comes to race distances. Obviously, the further a horse is travelling, you could argue it's as important or more important that a horse settles. They clearly need to stay and need the ability to get home. When you're talking about jockeys, the types of horses they ride clearly is down to the trainers they may ride for, the agents or the horses and the connections that agent books them onto, or the relationships that they develop. So that's always worth pondering if you're watching this, and there'll be some of you who like researching your own systems and various different things. A jockey to a certain extent can only work with the horses that they ride, of course. And while there are some jockeys who will get wins out of horses that others don't, you generally still need to be riding half-decent animals, generally over time, for your stats to look okay. And that can depend on the relationships you have, of course, with trainers, owners, etc. which, as an aside, isn't necessarily all to do with riding ability. You now need to be half decent on the TV, your feedback needs to be good, so on and so forth. But yes, there's logic for why certain jockeys may ride better over shorter distances or further. Race positioning, settling a horse. Obviously, the further you run over, there's more obstacles to jump. So a jockey's ability to set a horse at a hurdle or fence is obviously important, and some definitely are better than others at that. Race positioning and pace, your ability to be in the right position on certain courses and certain fields sizes, and depending on how the races play out. So there are reasons for why some jockeys would do better over further than others. Now, at some point in this video, maybe near the end for the systems nerds out there, I will kind of roll back from this angle you see in front of you and kind of dig down into those different rules there, so you can see all the different stats around the class and the distance and various other different pieces. Class 2 to 4, that makes logical sense. Class 1, it makes logical sense to leave out class 1 and 5. Why does it do that? Class 1 is obviously the most, you could argue, the most competitive racing there are. Obviously lots of graded races, open races, all age conditions races, etc., can depend more on the ability of the horse, and those races are harder to win. So it makes sense that you could ignore and shave off class 1 when you're looking at certain angles, unless of course you're looking at angles or trainers that do particularly well in such contests. But class 1 horses are clearly hard to come by, and class 5, you're at the other end. You're animals that are generally more unpredictable, that don't win as often, there's jumping may be worse, and you may be a brilliant jockey, but there's only so much you can do if you're riding in class 5s day after day and class 5 horses day after day. So it makes sense to focus on 2, 3 and 4. Now, there would be no logic, those of you who like building your own systems, to say, for example, excluding class 3 and just selecting class 2 and 4 if class 3, for example, wasn't as good on the stats as class 2 and 4. No logic for excluding class 3, not that I could think of at the top of my head. And if there's no logic for a rule, the logic, or the rule I should say, shouldn't be included, in my opinion, although plenty of people may disagree with that. Looking at the years, obviously you can dig back as far as you want. I've focused on the last full the three full calendar years, 2018, 19, 20 and 2021 to date, of which there's only a month and a half left of 2021. That does cover his time when he was number 1 for Harry Fry, of course. But of course, relationships with jockeys change over time. They develop. Going too far back with jockeys because of the people they may ride for, or the owners, and indeed their ability and skill, hopefully getting better over time. I don't think it's worth necessarily going too far back with jockeys. In any case, I've picked 2018, 3 full years, calendar years, and 2021 to date. Obviously, you can look at odds, and that can be linked to who jockeys ride for. And some might be for gambling yards or horses that do well, or some trainers are better at placing horses than others and do well when they're kind of certain odds and short near the top of the market. And then you're getting obviously 28, 33s and bigger, you're getting more into the kind of no-hopers end, although occasionally they win. But when I go back through this angle and kind of dig out all of these stats, you'll see, I think within this angle, those sent off bigger than 28 to 1 for Sean are 0 from 17 won places within this period. So not a massive stat size as such to ignore, and maybe he will fly in with a 50 to 1 winner at some point in the next couple of years, not impossible. Horse run jockey, now this is an interesting one that has helped shave quite a lot of qualifiers and losses off. Horses that Sean has ridden 0 to 5 times. Now, there's reasons for why, if you're focusing on jockeys who you think are good, they would improve a horse's chance more so than some of the jockeys that may have been on the horse previously. If a trainer has in mind that they want to book Sean or book another jockey, whatever, if they've got a target race, it could be significant when they're booked on, especially if they haven't ridden before. And of course, when you're looking at 0 to 5 runs, that the jockey has ridden the horse 0 to 5 times, that you could argue that's enough chances for the jockey to work out the horse, give feedback on what may be ideal conditions if they're not winning, where they should be placed next as an example. And they would generally, they're generally unexposed for the jockey. So the logic there is that the jockey will bring about improvement in the horse. And it is likely to some degree that the horse may well be fairly lightly raced also, or not necessarily overly exposed, especially when you get into handicaps. But that may not be the case, of course. But 0 to 5 runs or rides, I say, Sean has ridden the horses 0 to 5 times. There's logic there for why he may improve them early on, work them out. And before the handicapper catches up with them, and before he starts riding them 8, 9, 10, 20 times, which he has some horses which may be indicating they're exposed. So that's the logic behind those stats. You may be bored already. You may well have just noted down these rules, noted down the results at the top: 298 bets, 79 wins, 26.5 win percentage, £1 on to industry starting price. 188, £71 if you'd have put £1 win on each. Of course, if you've got the luxury of best odds guaranteed, that would be sky high through the roof, much higher than that. But even to Betfair starting price, for those of you who only have access to the exchanges, 268. That's not bad at all. 89% return on investment of Betfair. Now some important stats here. Mainly the Betfair. Well, you've got wins. Expected wins based on the odds that the horses are sent off at 57, and he's a fair chunk above that. Betfair actual versus expected. So if a horse performs, or the stats and the qualifiers perform in line with market expectations, you would get 1.00. If the number isn't higher than 1, you can't have any confidence that you're finding value and horses are being sent off at a bigger price than they should be, and that the angle or whatever is outperforming the market. So the bigger the number over 1, the more confidence that the market hasn't necessarily caught up as such as yet, and they're performing 55% above market expectations, which is good for us value hunters, because the horses are being sent off at a bigger price than their actual chance of winning. And long term, as we know, that is the only way to win. So that's that. I can do a breakdown as I rattle round to 12 minutes. Let me look at the stats. So you can see the breakdown by year. Now, like we said, we had 2020 was the year with Harry Fry, so fewer rides within those conditions. That might be because he was expected to be elsewhere for Harry, and the numbers are shooting back up to what they were in 2018-19. His dad did have a lull in 2020 as well. That might be linked to that, Peter Bowen, but his numbers are getting higher. His wins there, he's up around, 2019 was a lower year actually. The other 3 years he's up and around 30% win strike rate. That's not bad. You can see the placed efforts. You can see the Betfair AE, a dip there in 2019. It's holding steady, and the 3 and nearly 4 year average there, which is a good sign. And you can see some of the profit there, not quite at the height. It could be that the market over time is catching up. But an interesting angle nonetheless. There's plenty of logic there. I've spent about 40 minutes finding this particular angle. I probably could spend 2-3 hours in my head stuck in horse race base, pulling out various other different factors, of course. But I think as a starting point, as a way in, or just an angle, you said sod it, I'm just going to back it. There's plenty of logic there. Now I am going to jump over to, I'm in horse race base, which you've probably noticed because you can see horseracebase.com at the top, which I use for my system, most of my system building research and analysis. I have done since day dot. I don't know how long I've had the horse race base accounts for. I've got a couple of them, 5, 6 years, 7 years, maybe longer, maybe 2010. Yeah, I'm kind of in the habit. I like how they do everything in terms of system building, etc. And yeah, note down those angles in front of you if you so wish. I'm going to nip over to the query tool in GG's just to look at some other stuff. So this is GG's, the excellent gg's.co.uk. I've banged that drum before. There's probably a link below this video on, if you're watching on YouTube, where you can get a free registered account, and why wouldn't you? So you get loads of free tools and access to all sorts. But I want to look at jockeys. So what am I looking at? Race might be useful. Country, let's just focus on the UK. Race code, actually on this occasion just going to focus on chases, and I'll show a reason why. Well, I think Sean's win percentage is generally higher in chases, and it's probably biased to me a bit as well because I mainly focus on chases as well, but I just wanted to show a few things here. So I could do chases. We're looking at the last 5 years. That's in the UK. I can generate the report here. That's all chase runners wins in the UK since, well, in the last 5 years, going back to the 17th or so of November, 5 years ago. Impact value of 1, that's what you'd expect from the whole sample as a size. Anything above 1 is indicating that that said angle or idea, or in this case jockey, is outperforming the group as a whole. So the higher the number above 1, the better they are than the average, I suppose, or the mean. Um, and yes, I can then. So we've got, this is looking at all chases run in the UK in the last 5 years. I can then break down by jockey using clicking these little dots to the left. So you could break down all of those by different things. I'm only saying that because there will be people watching this who use GG's and the query tool, and you might have some mild interest or none at all in terms of how I might occasionally look at things. So I'll click that jockey tab there and I can generate a report, and that's going to apply the jockey stats over or onto these chase stats once it loads. There you go. Now I'm going to select those with 150 rides just to cut out some of the noise, I suppose. That's 150 plus. I can update here. So now I'm looking at all jockeys with at least 150 chase rides in the last 5 years. What could I sort by? I suppose I could sort by wins. So remember, this is all rides over fences. In that period, and Brian Hughes, 261 rides, that's pretty decent. You can look at this impact value. So 1 is the kind of group as a whole. The higher the number above 1, arguably the better the jockey is over fences. Their impact and their value is much higher within such race conditions. Sam Twiston-Davies, not bad. Harry Skelton, Sean Bowen, as you can see there, 4th in terms of the total number of chase winners, and not a bad win percentage, nearly 20% on all chase rides in that time. Only 0.5% above market expectations. So these stats will rely on the odd monster winner, and just backing them all long term, his numbers will turn into some of these jockeys, because you can see there any number below 1 is suggesting their mounts might be over bet to some degree, and you can see these big red numbers if you backed if you backed all Sam Twiston's rides over fences in the last 5 years, you'd have lost £307 betting £1 on them, £1 each. Sean Bowen, you'd have won 75, which is pretty good. So there's different things you can look at in terms of the number of winners. Obviously, Richard Johnson is now retired. Aidan Coleman, Paddy Brennan. You can see the top dogs there in terms of chase winners. So you can see all those different jockeys down there. That's win. I could sort by win percentage, of course, which is always useful. That's the low end. Now, like I said, some of the stuff like I referred to at the beginning, a jockey needs the horses, of course, but some jockeys are better than others. Obviously, now Harry Skelton, he hasn't been doing too bad. He can ride a chaser, and he knows how to ride a chase. That impact value of 1.85 is pretty high. Noel Feely used to be pretty good until he retired, as did Wayne Hutchinson. Nico is pretty decent as well. And there's Sean. So 1, 2, third in for all chase jockeys in terms of win percentage that are still riding, and this is for UK rides, remember. Harry Cobden's there, Barry Garrett, since retired, Bryony Fost is there as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's your top 5. Harry, Nico, Sean, Harry Cobden, Bryony Frost in terms of win percentages. Obviously you can then look at profit and loss if you wanted, just as an idea. Ryan Manny is up there pretty high. You can see there that would have been down to some big price horses, no doubt, but he's a pretty decent chase jockey as well. Danny McMenamin, young, inexperienced, still learning his trade. He's pretty half decent. Jordan Naylor, that profit helped by the Badger Rails, a superb ride in the Badger Rails. So yeah, you've got different factors there you can look at, stare at, ponder, note down, pause the video, do what you want. I'm going to sort by impact value. So this is indicating there the best really against the kind of overall pool of chase riders. Like I said, that can be linked to the horses and the connections they ride for, of course, but isn't necessarily the case. I'm just waiting for this to upload. There we go. So yeah, Noel Feely was pretty good, but Harry Skelton straight in there in terms of the adding value and the impact of him riding chasers. Nico de Bonville's next in of those still riding. Robbie Powell, when he did ride in the UK, not so much now due to COVID, but clearly decent. And there's Sean Bowen again. So he's up there in the elite on some of these figures you can look at in terms of riding over fences. Harry Skelton, Nico, Sean Bowen, Darryl Jacobs pretty good, Bryony Frost, Charlie Deutsch isn't bad either. On that figure, Harry Cobden, Ryan Mania, you could look at those that are riding 1.5 or more winners than the rest of the group as a whole in terms of over fences, and then you're looking at kind of Ryan Mania up, and then you've got Harry Skelton. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I suppose they're the top 8 of the riders still riding mainly in the UK today. So that's interesting. Now I can select Sean Bowen. There's only one more thing I want to do before jumping back to horse race base. If I click Sean, I can generate the report here. The great thing with GG's and the query tool, especially, is the ability to look at pace and to look at the pace score, because they keep all the data and you can drill into all these different many angles, especially jockeys, and see who's doing what. Let me just change this number of runs here and update so we see all of his chase rides. Now, if you're unaware of this, then null, I can ignore those. These are probably horses making their debut who had no pace profile or there was insufficient data, but a 1 generally indicates the horse is held up out the back. A 2 indicates the horse is ridden in mid-division. A 3 would be prominent, tracking the pace but not leading, but nearer first and last as a race develops. 4 would be leading, making all, and you can see the stats down here. Now, Sean, those stats, without looking across the kind of jockey pool as a whole, probably wouldn't be too dissimilar to many, but Sean is up there as one of the best when he's on a lone front runner. And if you combine the excellent GG's pace maps with Sean's ride, or any pace maps you have made access to, I think at the races has some possibly. There may be other bits and pieces, but you can get free access to all GG's pace maps on Mondays, I think, as a free registered user. And of course, you've got 5 races of the day. You have access to the full race cards, so you can use the pace maps there and try and work out, is Sean going to be front running or indeed racing prominently? You can see the jump in terms of win percentage and place percentage. As I've said before, about 64% of all handicap chases are won by horses who lead or race prominently. So it's always trying to have horses on side or chasers on side that are kind of front running or tracking the pace. That can depend on obviously different circumstances, different other things. But his lone front runners are performing 44% above market expectations and 2.3 more winners than the group as a whole with those front runners. So he's clearly very good. He's clearly talented. He's clearly better than a lot of the others. Without looking at those other top 5, 6 jockeys, I do know Nico on a chaser is deadly on a lone front runner as well, having looked before, but maybe that's something I can dive into another time. But just as an idea with Bowen's chasers, front runners, interesting, and it might be that that's the case across quite a lot of his, all sorts of different race types. He is very good on a front runner. So that's of interest. Then you can note that down, and maybe you apply that to any qualifiers from this particular angle to narrow it down further if you want. Use this as a way in, and then look at the pace maps and pace setups. Do you think he's going to lead? Do you think he's going to track the pace? So that's that. Now, I've been going on for far too long, 23 minutes, but I'm going to carry on going because some of you will be watching this, whoever's left. There might be 10, 15 of you, maybe there's 100. We shall see who are still finding this interesting. You've probably long clicked the speed up cog in the bottom right hand corner, but hopefully I'll still sound like I'm making sense and I'm saying something useful. So yeah, you've got that angle in front of you. Now I'm going to build out and build back with that angle at a future point, but let me just delete some of these rules. And kind of let me just keep that odds cap in. So this is Sean Bowen. This is all rides since the start of 2018. You obviously can't back them all. You'd be rather poor if you were to do so. Now you can look at different things, I suppose. You can do breakdowns and digs. So I could just with all rides break down by trainer and this is an interesting tool, good tool within horse race base. Now I can sort by wins highest to lowest, so just the number of winners if you so wanted to ponder. Obviously he rides a lot for his dad, him and his brother. There was Harry Fry. Those numbers will come down now. He's not stable. First choice there. Caroline Bailey used to ride a lot for and still does. I think that yard's had sickness in the last year or two, or year and a half. They haven't had many runners. Some of them have been a bit under the weather. So That might be the reason why the stats are low. Sean's a genius. Well, a very, very good jockey, one of the best riding in the National Hunt game and over fences, particularly if the horses aren't very well or not fit or a bit sick. There's only so much he can do. Rebecca Curtis, he has ridden plenty for, and that's a relationship that keeps ticking along, and that's one to note down generally, as is the Keithley relationship. That's really taken off in the last year, especially as he's been freed from Harry Fry, I suppose. And yeah, anytime he rides for Martin Keithley, he's ridden Rev recently, back on the Lash, a few others. So that's a trainer jockey combo worth noting. And I mean, you can just see the number of trainers he's had winners for. David Rees, winners there, but you have to pick them. John McConnell, when he brings horses over from Ireland, likes to use Sean. Again, you can't just back them systematically to SP, and they're generally short, but clearly it is a sign of intent when Sean is booked. Is it Tom Weston? I think he doesn't have many, but take note when he books Sean. Nichols has used him occasionally, and I think Sean still does ride out of the Nichols yard once or twice a week. So, he might be put on a few, but of course he's got an embarrassment of riches of jockeys. Harry Cobden, very good. Bryony Frost, very good. Lorcan Murder's turning into a decent jockey, and so on. Gary Hamner, that's taken off in the last year. Any time that he books him is definitely worth a look, especially around the likes of Bangor. Dr. Newland, though he uses Sam Twiston Davis more these days, is kind of his number one go-to if available. Sam picks between him and his dad's horses generally, and so on and so forth. Sarah Humphreys, not too bad. Noel Chance, Noel Kelly even. Smaller numbers here. Ollie Murphy, that was the winner at Ayr. He had a couple for him. Maybe Ollie Murphy will start using him more. Aidan Coleman has, he's kind of stable jockey, I think, to what he is to Ollie Murphy, and probably has first choice and sent to first places. But if Sean's used, especially on any Northern Raiders, if Sean's going to ride more up north as well, who knows, and so on and so forth. So you can see all those trainers in front of you and pause the video if you want and note down these ridden winners for so many all the way down here. His booking is generally a positive, but I can stop that there. You can pause it. Obviously you can do what you want. You could look at race courses, of course. Remember, this is all runners, all rides since the start of 2018. And you can see where he's generally had lots of winners. You need to dig down into some of these in terms of profitable. But again, Exeter he rides well. And all these ones with, Perth. Lots of summer tracks, of course. That's mainly linked to his dad's horses, as we know. And there was plenty for Martin Keithley over the summer and Gary Hamner. So you can look down this particular list and again note down Kelso when he goes that far north, so on and so forth. So, you can note down some of those tracks and do with that as you please. And yeah, that's that. What else could I look at? National Hunt race type. Now this is just splitting up to the three, and you can see there, I suppose, why I focused on chases within when looking at Gigi's query tool, and some of those stats. Generally. Riding above, market expectations, the win percentage a bit high, but that could be because hurdlers, you're generally riding more immature horses. They might not be ready to win. They might be riding in novice hurdles. They're there for the experience, etc. Whereas chasers generally are getting more mature and getting older, and might be more, streetwise and there to perform on the occasion that he rides them. I could just click on chasers because of that. Well, actually, no, let me just, before I do that, I'm ticking around at half an hour. I can click by race type, which is obviously interesting. That can be linked again more to the trainer and the type of horses they have. But you can see all the different race types as defined by horse race base. These chase and hurdlers are generally graded kind of conditions races. You can see National Hunt flat, maiden hurdles, novice chase. Does pretty well in novice chasers. Note those down. Some of those may have been for Harry Fry, because he likes to get on with his pretty early and likes a novice chase winner off the top of my head. Handicap novice chase, handicap chases, and so on. So you do have to pick and choose. But you can see some of those stats and different race types in front of you. Pause the video, note them down if you so please. I could look at, what could I look at as generally? You can dig in all sorts. I could look at track and trainer, couldn't I? This is just for you to note down of interest. This is sorted by most winners first. When he rides for his dad at Foss Lass, this is all rides, isn't it? Utoxter, Harry Fry Exeter, of course. that few of those opportunities now. But again, you can look at those stats, pause, absorb, do what you want. In front of you, you've got the trainer and the track. What else could we look at? We could look at, let's have a look at, well, let's no, we've done I've done a breakdown by race type, haven't I? I could break down by distance, and actually, yeah, I mean, I've touched on a few things there with all runners. Let me just focus on going back to that starter angle. So I was flicking through, so that's your starter set to a point. You could remove the odds cap if doing research, or put some kind of odds cap on if you like doing your system research. As I move into the last few minutes, I'm round to 30. I'm just going to talk about that original angle at the beginning of my thinking and my process. So my way in, I suppose, was a chat on the blog. It was looking at another inspired rider. I remember watching, like I said earlier, back on the lash at Cheltenham around the cross country, going, bloody hell, that was some riding. If you'd have put Sean Bowen on the second would have won. That's no discredit to the kind of more inexperienced and more amateur jockey on the second, who rode a fine race. But Sean was very strong in the finish, and how he got that horse round for one so inexperienced as a chase. He'd obviously scored plenty of the track because the Keithleys live up the road, and that's something for me to remember for future national hunt, cross country races at Cheltenham. They obviously don't live far away. They've had any currency win, now had back on the lash. They clearly can school a horse to run around the cross country, and it's likely the horse won't run around the cross country unless they have done well on that schooling. They've been to the cross country track plenty, and plenty more than a few of the others had been, by the looks of it. But that's an aside. That winner on Ollie Murphy's horse at Bangor, which was African Dance, that was an incredible win. Yeah, that back on the lash was pretty good as well. He's been riding, a winner for Martin Mulholland there, a recent winner. Simon Kittow, there's the Ask Me Early winner. That is the name of the horse for Harry Fry, so still riding the odd one for him. So what was we thinking? Obviously, I looked at those stats for different race types, and there wasn't too much between hurdle and chase in terms of the breakdown of different hurdle race types and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to go there just yet. I did look at class. And I touched on that at the beginning. Class 1 are generally very hard to win. You definitely need a much better horse. There's a reason, there's a logical reason for why jockey's stats may not be so good at class 1, because it arguably is possibly more down to the horse. That's down to who you ride, and those races are generally more competitive, although it does include class 1 kind of listed grade 3 handicaps as well. But they're, again, ultra competitive, hard to win, and your ability may only get you so far within the rough and tumble of races like that. And then at the flip end, you've got class 5. You can see the stats there. Generally, they're more inconsistent horses. They're harder to win with. There's a reason they're running at class 5 level generally. And yeah, there's logical reasons for excluding class 5, because again, the jockey's ability can only get them so far. It can be more down to do with the horse as well. So class 3, 2, 3 and 4, there's clear logical reasons. Now there's not, you could go, oh, there's no profit to class 3. No reason logically for why you would exclude class 3, for why Sean should ride better in class 2 and class 4 but not class 3. There's no logical reason I can think of for that, but there is, as explained, logical reasons for why I can exclude class 1, 5 and 6. And of course 6, you're talking about national hunt flat races over jumps, so that's more linked to that, of course. But there it could be logical reason if class 6 was decent, actually, why you could click class 6 and have 2, 3, 4 and 6, and that's because that's more to do with the race type, national hunt flat race. But that's the logic there. So I could click that, and now from this point in, of course, I'm digging within the stats for class 2 and 3, and you've got to be careful not to backfit and to keep ramping up different stats. You can see the stats there. Just focusing on the class runners isn't enough. The other thing was then distance, which I did look at. In my head, I suppose, from watching, I've been thinking, like I said, that logical way in, some chat on the blog, me having seen a couple of crackers recently from Sean Bowen. There's a few within the members post. There was a great chat in the comments about jockeys, and I touched on some jockey bookings and various other different things for certain reasons. that example was Alan King actually, and Tom Cannon. He had two runners, one at Lingfield, one at Fakenham. Tom Cannon, who's stable jockey, went to Fakenham, and that did prove to be instructive because that horse won. But that's an aside, but that got me thinking more about jockeys, and there was some good jockey chat. So that was the way in. And when you watch racing, or you might, certain events or results or performances might just spark an idea if you like stats research and so on and so forth. But yeah, race distance in my head, Sean, I suppose because I watch and focus more on races over 3 miles and further, you always notice when he rides a cracker. And he does have well positioned, as per those pace maps in GGs, especially when he's kind of front running in near the front and leading, or racing prominently. So you can look at distance. Now, this can be linked to the immaturity of the horse, or the horses are, they're getting older, and there might be more novice hurdles over shorter distances, of course, for example, more novice chases over shorter distances. And these horses might not be there ready to run. But if I just click all the way through to kind of 2 mile 5.5, you could arguably go to 2 mile 4.5 on those particular stats actually, and then 2 mile 5, are you getting at this point into kind of more staying, the staying realm, and more staying chases and so forth. But if I just look at the stats up to 2 mile 4.5, you can see the losses there, and this is still within two class 3 and 4. It gives the impression Sean is better in longer distances for some of those reasons touched on that at the beginning. The ability, it might be more important. He's probably riding more immature horses and those that are still learning about their job. That's the foundation. They might not be there to win, but of course there's fewer obstacles to jump. Maybe race position is not as important in some longer distance races, or that's a debatable point. But there's some logic there for why he might do better over further. So then if I just break down by race distance, I can then look at 2 miles 5 plus. You could go to 2 miles 6. That angle I started at the beginning. If you wanted win strike rates 30%, or you're pushing towards 30% on 28 to 30%, that might be a reason for doing that. But we can stick on 2 mile 5 plus for now. And you can see the stats there. So you can see how that starts to build as a kind of logical way and a logical angle. You can then build back out and just check that you can delete that class and then look back at the class angle. This is so that when you're building a system, you're looking at each kind of rule and idea separately before trying to work out whether there's a logical reason for the collective. And there still is there for the reasons stated. So back to that, and then we was looking at that idea of it. Sean Bowen is the fact that he's riding the horse. Will the horse improve for Sean riding? All that context and that idea there that we think he is on the stats and from that GG's table are suggesting he's one of the best jumps jockeys around. Especially over fences, but more generally one of the best around. It makes logical sense that some horses would improve for him riding them, that he would get to know them, that he would work out and chat with connections about where they should be ridden next, on their second or third start. So if I break down and do horse runs jockey, that's this stat down here, there are logical reasons. And of course, the more times you ride a horse, you are arguably saying or indicating the horse is more exposed. They've had plenty of opportunities. They're a bit older. They're open to attack from younger, more progressive legs, and maybe Sean can't work his magic necessarily. So yeah, with horses that he's ridden fewer times, they're probably going to be more lightly raced or well handicapped. Certainly, if they're running in handicaps. And he has an impact on riding them for the first time, as you can see there. So if I click 0, I've clicked 5 because there is a drop off generally over that 5. If I go to 6 plus, you do have to have a cut off summary and you're just getting rid of a lot of qualifiers for not a lot of profit. Now, of course, that's not to say he doesn't have winners that he's ridden at least 5 times, because as you can see, he does, and they're just about profitable. Although since the start of 2019, 2019, not so much. So there's logical sense for focusing on those that he hasn't ridden many times for all of those reasons just touched on. Horse run jockey, if I can find where that particular box has gone. Yes, it's Josh, it's in the same place it was before. So 0 to 5, I will conclude this at 40 minutes. I've got a minute and a bit. So you can see the stats there. For those particular rides there, you can see there back up to 30% in 2021. Maybe that the shackles are unleashed, or he's been released from, Ryan for Harry Fry, and you can see those numbers and those percentages getting back up to, or arguably on win percentage at least, and place percentages. This is his best year to date since 2018. So that's positive. He is riding for more trainers, I think. I get that impression without diving into the stats each year, looking at how many different trainers he's ridden for. But it's positive that the 2 best years on actual versus expected, the last 2 also. That gives the impression and confidence that the market as yet hasn't quite caught up to how good Sean Bowen is. And you've got those stats in front of you. Now, if I break down by distance, yeah, I mean, that probably was the reason I focused on 2 miles 6 plus. It is just going over a further distance. Again, might be 2 miles 6. You could make some logical case for that's when you're starting to get into a staying trip, and stamina and jumping more obstacles, etc., may be more important. I don't know, but there is clearly, the further he's going, the better he appears to be doing. And yeah, there's reason, there's logic for 2 miles 6 plus, but don't necessarily be put off 2 mile 5, but 2 mile 4 and shorter. The stats and logic dictates that you do have to be more picky if wanting to attack with a systematic angle, as you can see in front of you. And I think that neatly draws me back down to where we were at the beginning. So hopefully I've said something useful. Actually, maybe I'll just dig down again. Hold on. Let me break down by track. So I'm within that starting set of microsystem. So to finish off, let me break down by track, which you can see there. There might be tracks you focus on more. Some summer tracks there, of course, and you're not dealing with big sample sizes necessarily with some of them. But clearly some tracks he rides better than others, or has more opportunities than others, so on and so forth. I could look at trainer, of course, and maybe that's the last place I will finish, and sort by wins, high to low. Peter Bowen, his dad, so in those conditions, that's the kind of, we saw the stats with his dad, they kind of made quite a big loss backing them all. That's not a bad way in for his rides. Harry Fry, and he still might get some opportunities for him. We can see those Keithy stats, David Rees, Gary Hamner, the Curtis stats, John McConnell, and so on and so forth. But yeah, don't be put off by the Caroline Bailey as such. Like I said, I think some of that might be linked to yard trouble, illness, virus in the last year and a bit. His stats for his dad wouldn't have looked great last year either, but he's bounced back. And not many rides for others on numerical within that particular stats angle. So I think in 41 minutes I've whizzed through quite a lot. Hopefully I've spoken fast enough for plenty of you. Hopefully, well, I've definitely said something interesting. And if you like stats and angles and all that kind of thing, with any luck, you have noted down something which you can take away. I may have said something which sparks another idea for future system research and so on and so forth. But with that said, hopefully I've said something which helps lead you to more winners moving forward, to more winners in the future. Or just I've recorded something you found interesting and mildly entertaining for a few minutes, and that has got you thinking and might give you some ideas, and with any luck, fingers crossed, helps you find more winners, make a bit more money even for small stakes moving forwards. But people, trainers, jockeys are creatures of habit. Some are better than others in certain conditions, and I think that's certainly the case with the excellent Sean Bowen, and more people should really be using him. Bigger yards, bigger owners, etc. But we won't complain because he is inspiring plenty of horses to better performances for smaller yards, and the smaller yards will be enjoying the fact they have access to his services. Given he's freelance now, depending on what his dad's got, depending on where Sean is on any given day, because he wants winners, because he's been working, riding out of lots of different yards, that may be indicative of their chance and what he's booked on, especially in those conditions that you can see in front of you, but more generally. And as one of my members posted in the comments, kind of asking me to take a deeper look at the Sean Bowen stats, and a good job he did, because we found some gold, I think. His booking and Sean's rides may be a decent way in. So if you're looking for a way in to finding bets over jumps each day, just focusing on opening up, where is Sean Bowen riding? What is he riding? You could even apply some of those pace ideas. Is he going to lead? Is he going to race promptly? And then all of a sudden you might have a pretty short list each day on which to ponder more, or just attack, or do what you want with. So yeah, with that said, thanks for watching. Do hit subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, button down below. Click the thumbs up like if you like, click the thumbs down dislike if you dislike, and if you did dislike, do post a comment down below. And I'll do my best to do better next time. But as always, if you've got any ideas, this video is also within the free reports and systems tab on my blog. So do post a comment in that blog post if you so wish. Maybe spark some other ideas, etc. Maybe I should record another of these videos sooner rather than later. But with that said, yes, 45 minutes. Long enough, but some of you like long videos, and I've covered plenty. With that said, thanks for watching. Best of luck with any bets moving forward as always. And until the next time, this is Josh from Racing the Profit saying thanks for your time and bye for now.